Good day. In 15 years on the Constitutional Court of South Africa, like our Supreme Court, only once did I change my mind because of one of my law clerks. Her name was Fatima, and as you will see, the name was relevant. And all she did was raise an eyebrow, and it caused me to change my mind. This is the first case under our new constitution dealing with freedom of religion. And what does it concern? It concerns the sale of wine and beer at grocery stores on Sundays and these other two holidays. I couldn't think of a less significant religious issue than that one. And when Fatima raised her eyebrow, it just made me remember the extent to which religion had been used as an instrument of separation and exclusion in South Africa, particularly against people of Asian origin who happen to be Muslim and Hindu in the large majority. But the second case turned out to be much more difficult, and that was the Christian Education Schools case, CESA. A group of Americans who believed spare the rod, spoil the child. They believed it was a biblical requirement that young boys at school who misconducted themselves ought to be subjected to corporal correction. And it was their duty as Christians to beat the kids. And the one prison cell that I was in was at the back of a court, and every afternoon at about 4:30 I would hear the caning of the juveniles who'd been sentenced to what was called a whipping. And I'd hear the screams, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the screams would get louder and louder and louder. And when I had my little exercise time afterwards, I would run round in that tiny courtyard and I'd see bits of broken cane there. And I loathed beatings. So now I'm a judge and I've got to decide rights of conscience versus beating children, which way to go. The next case dealt with a youngish guy, a very good law student. He'd qualified. He wanted to now practice as an attorney in South Africa. And the Law Society objected. They said he'd twice been convicted of smoking marijuana. And you can't be a lawyer if you break the law and you indicate you will continue breaking the law. The case after that, where we were almost unanimous, in a sense was much easier to decide. There was a provision dealing with what happens to housing in Cape Town after the death of the registered homeowner. And it said the house goes to the widow or the widower. And a woman who happened to be in a Muslim marriage claimed that she was entitled to inherit the house. And South African law until then had been saying that Muslim marriages were not true marriages. The second last case I'll deal with was of a young girl at high school. Her name was Sonali Pillay. A very beautiful judgment written by my colleague, the Chief Justice Pius Langa. She wore a nose stud, tiny little nose stud. She was Tamil, and she said it's part of her culture, her religion, and her mother was very insistent. And the school, it was Durban Girls High, that used to be for white girls only. Now it's maybe a third white girls, a third of Indian origin, a third of African origin. And one of the rules of the school is no jewelry. The last case, same-sex marriages. I believe Belgium was the second country in the world to recognize same-sex marriages. That was done through Parliament. In the case of South Africa, two people attracted to each other, they start dating, they go out, they live together for 10 years, their friends regard them as a couple, and they say, let's get married, and they go to the marriage registry, and the marriage officer says, I have no problems at all, but you're both women. And the Marriage Act says, I, A, B, take you, C, D, to be my lawful husband / wife. And the term husband and wife presupposes genders, different genders being involved. I can't marry you. I feel very, very privileged to have been a member of that court, working with colleagues who often had very, very different philosophical beliefs to myself and coming to the conclusions that we did. And I like to feel enriching international jurisprudence in the way that we did in the cases that I've just mentioned. Thank you.